All right. Well, thank you guys for joining us and talking about developing research opportunities in undergraduate courses. Today we have two panelists. We've got Dr. Vanessa Coling and Dr. Donald Amoroso. They're going to be talking to us about their experiences in putting research elements into their class and then also offering additional research experiences for their students here at AUM. So I will let each of you introduce yourself briefly, and then we'll kind of get started on some of the questions that I know people have for you. Vanessa, if you wouldn't mind, can we start with you?
Sure. I am an assistant professor in the Department of Biology and Environmental Science. I'm a plant evolutionary biologist in terms of my research. And I have been doing a lot of teaching in the introductory series in the biology department. So I'm going to talk a little bit about research being incorporated into freshman biology, as well as I can talk about some of the upper level stuff that I do also.
Thank you. Don?
Okay, hi everybody. I'm a distinguished teaching professor of information systems in the College of Business. I teach mostly graduate classes, but I also do undergraduate classes, and I'll talk a little bit about the research there that I work on.
Awesome, thank you. I guess one of the first things, not everybody's as versed in this across campus as you all are. Can you just kind of talk about some of the reasons why having undergraduate research, in your classrooms is important for our students? Whichever one wants to start first.
We'll let Vanessa.
Okay. Yeah, I'm happy to do it. I think that research experience is important for a lot of reasons, but I mean, I'm a scientist, right? And we teach in biology, we're teaching the scientific method. So one of the most important things to me is that students actually have to learn how to use the scientific method in practice. And they really can't do that unless they're having some kind of research experience opportunity, right? The canned labs that used to be very typical of a lot of science courses may teach components of the scientific method, but I've, in my experience, found that students don't really understand the whole process when they're only looking at little pieces of it at a time. If you don't introduce them to trial and error and failure, then you're not introducing them to an important part of that process as well. So I think when they get to practice that and they get to actually have some experience of failure as well, it's really good for building resilience and confidence in students, because they can see I don't have to just give up right at this stage. We can work through a problem and learn how to solve it and keep going. So I think research experience is important in science courses just for teaching science, right? But also for teaching a lot of those soft skills that people need, confidence, ability to work independently, right? Problem solving, that kind of thing.
Awesome, thank you, Donald.
Okay, the whole idea of research goes back to what the question of why did I even get my PhD a couple of years ago. I'll just say a couple of years ago. I don't want anybody to do the math. I still look young, right? And I was really motivated when I was at UGA by two professors that were saying research can change the world. And at UGA, people are coming up with some really cool ideas. Some looking at consumers, or looking at the processes, or looking at innovation. And I thought, wow, this is really great. So I initially got my PhD to do research, and I think University of Georgia was happy about that too, because they say you'll learn how to teach. We'll teach you how to teach, and you'll get some experience. And of course, then I did, and then I was super motivated. But I love doing research. So, I don't even need to do research, because I'm already a full professor, distinguished professor. I've got 52 referee journal articles in my portfolio and 100 and something conferences and book chapters. I don't really need to write papers with colleagues and students to do 2 or 3 papers a year, but I love doing it. I'm one of those faculty members that really love exploring new things in research and doing it. So for me, whether I'm working with students at the undergraduate level or the grad level, it's the same motivation that I try to work with them. And that is, let's see if we can find even one small thing, something new in the research. And then from there, we can then create a research model, and maybe we can even publish it. So a lot of times students will continue to work with me when they graduate and publish. So Scott's here, so he remembers when I broke his class into teams, and I gave each team a real research data set. It wasn't something from the book. It was some data set I collected in Thailand or in Japan or China or the Philippines. And we analyzed, we used the tools to analyze that and interpret, and the findings were just, really cool, because a lot of the times the students in the teams found some things in the data that I hadn't even seen, and they were able to report that. So that's really exciting. At the undergraduate level, though, I try to get students to get interested in research, and so not as motivated maybe as a graduate student, but at least interested. And so for me, this differs a lot from Vanessa, but for me, I'm working with usually senior level undergraduate students in research. And so I will integrate research, but sometimes earlier, like if I'm teaching QMTD 2750, we'll use some data sets there. Maybe the students are juniors or so. But I just finished doing a research project last semester with 4 undergraduate Vietnamese students, and they all came to me and took an independent study, and they said, can we study the consumer behavior in Vietnam? And I said, sure, that'd be great. So we went through all the steps you normally go through, where we looked at defined the problem. We did a literature review. I had a basic survey that that has been approved, but we went ahead and interpreted that into Vietnamese. And then we administered it, collected data, and then cleaned the data set, then ran statistical techniques against it to see if there's any correlations, or to see if we looked at regression analysis, or if there was any differences in the means. We ran ANOVA, we ran all t-tests, we ran everything, and then wrote up the interpretation. And each student had a different piece that they were writing up, and then we would get together and meet twice a week and talk about it and see if there's any value, that we could glean out of the research. But for me, these are honor students also. For me, the thing that's interesting is that these 4 students now are really excited about doing research. They're like, oh, I don't believe it. We actually wrote with Dr. Amoroso, we actually wrote a paper that if we refined it, we could publish it. If we're interested to go further with it, we could do that. So I always try to move the students toward publication. Now, at the graduate level, if the student wants to go for a PhD, I want them to write a paper with me. I'm encouraging them. And if they graduate and I have a student that graduated from our MSMS program 2 years ago, and she's in Shanghai. I have another student who's in India, and then one who's in Dallas. And we're all working on 2 different papers so that we can get it in shape to submit for publication. We've submitted one of them, and if it comes back, revise or resubmit, whatever. But they, at least when they apply for a doctoral program, they can at least show that this is a publishable piece of research that I'm working with my professor. Now, I've actually had undergraduate students do the same thing. So, because they're like, I know I want to go for my PhD, and I definitely wanted to use this for my thesis in the MBA program or in the MSMS program. So then, okay, let's do it. The thing that's the hardest thing of all to do is to get the student motivated to do that, to go all the way, do that type of research, because they're tired, they're taking other classes, sometimes they work. So, if we do a paper and they turn it in, it's an independent study research course, and then they graduate, I would say maybe only 1 out of 10, well, maybe 2 out of 10 max would continue to work after they graduate by doing Zoom sessions and let's clean this up and we need more theory, we need more articles to make it publishable into the journal article style. So just trying to see who is motivated to continue. But I, and that's kind of a long answer just to say that I work both at the undergrad and grad level to work with students in research, either in the classroom, yes, bringing data sets in, yes, but doing outside the classroom, doing projects like an independent study where they're doing real research. And I'm a firm believer as a faculty member here to do primary data collection. I'm not saying anything's wrong with secondary data collection, but for me, I always want to be the one who collects the data using the constructs and the variable operationalizations that nobody else, not all. I mean, we need to use some theory and some constructs, but doing new constructs, ones that nobody's looked at before, and seeing if there's any relationship. That's exciting. And then when you publish it, I'm working with consumer behavior. And then when you publish it, there are certain people, there's certain companies that have people that all they do is look at published research and they write. So for example, I'll get an email lots of times from Amazon.com or somebody at eBay saying, can you send me the full article of this? I know she just published something recently on privacy and trust issues related to the consumer. Can you send me the full? So that's what they do for a living. They just watch the horizon to see if there's any research coming out of research centers or faculty. And
let me pause you because I want to kind of bring us back just a hair because there's a couple of things that you had touched on. That I really want to make sure that we put out there as information, and then we can kind of come back to some of the other work that you've been doing, which I know is awesome stuff, and I want you to share all that. One of the points that you both kind of brought up is that the things that we do in the classroom are, of course, part of our curriculum, but where we get that biggest effect in the student's academic career and potentially, life direction is when we give them additional experience in research, that little extra above and beyond, where they're able to use all of those skills, analyzing those data sets and working in a team environment and making that work their own. That's the part that we're trying to capture. So a lot of times for us, when we're trying to get more people to be involved in offering these research opportunities, sometimes they're like, oh, well, I gave them research opportunities. We have a semester project, and where there's certain elements of that count and that are awesome, we see that more as like a building block. Of course, we want you to focus on those building block opportunities, but these kinds of experiences that you all are working on are really where we want to head the university as a whole for our students. So it's something I just kind of wanted to talk about, that while those like semester projects and stuff like that are important, it's that experience that you're talking about that is resume worthy or CV worthy, where it could be something that's published, that we're wanting to kind of work towards. Another point that I think that we can both of you kind of led us to it is that those research experiences don't work for all students, but it's an opportunity that they wouldn't have had to maybe see, oh, I like research, it's exciting to me. And so by giving them that opportunity, we're exposing them to something that they wouldn't normally have, and potentially opening up a new career field or career interest that they might be swayed to go towards in the future. So we kind of touched on a lot of stuff. Vanessa, can you talk about some of the opportunities that you've been offering your students in classes? And then too, you also are one of our recipients for the Provost Mini Grant. And so I know that that's also kind of tied into some of the things that you've been working on. So feel free to kind of talk about that if you'd like.
Sure. Okay, so there's a few different things I do. And I guess, so I'll talk about the stuff we've been doing that's brand new in the freshman biology lab. And I guess that might fit a little into a semester project idea, but I do want to bring it up because I think it has elements that are a little bit different from a typical semester project. And it is something brand new. So Before that freshman biology lab, biology 1011, was all canned labs. So, folks came in basically, they read a lab manual that told them sort of what to expect from what they would do that day. They did those things, and then they either saw stuff, right? It worked or it didn't work. And so, a lot of students really weren't learning how to test hypotheses or do anything sort of typical of science, right? And we would get a lot of what I would hear from students oftentimes. I'd be trying to prompt them on, what they had learned that day, and especially if something went wrong, they would just be like, "Well, it didn't work, so I didn't do it right, and you know, I don't really know what I learned," kind of thing. So it wasn't sparking any enthusiasm. It wasn't getting them excited about science. And what we've converted to now is what's called a course-based undergraduate research experience. And this is a particular teaching model that's becoming more and more popular in the sciences and STEM. Where we have built the entire semester around using the scientific method. And now our freshmen actually have the opportunity to do an independent project. They do work in groups, but they are working on a hypothesis of their own design. They have to design the experiment, they have to carry it out, and they have to write up the results and present those results to their peers in the class. We started out with something that was published. So we used a published cure. So there's education literature out there where you can find people, right, typing up great ideas that they've had, working through the education literature. You can find lots of more and more cures are being developed that you can then try to modify and deploy in your own classes. We picked one. We've been piloting it. We decided to actually make our own modifications, and we'll see, maybe we can write that up as well. I haven't really worked through all the details of that. But right now, we have students working with fruit flies, which are a really great model organism in biology. All kinds of things in biology come from fruit flies, and things that are actually applicable to human health. So students are now working with that as a model organism, and they design these projects. And so I guess you could still sort of think of those as a semester project. It's not necessarily going beyond the semester. But if students are really motivated, and we get different levels of motivation, right, they would actually have the opportunity of potentially continuing that experiment. And hopefully we'll be able to mentor some people in the future. It sort of depends on the level of student engagement and motivation and excitement. But hopefully we're doing a good job of engaging a larger group of students, and preparing them better for the kinds of research experiences I think that we are all maybe a little more focused on in this panel, right? So you can think of this as scaffolding. We're trying to get students better prepared to be able to do an independent project with a faculty member that could lead to publication, right? Because particularly in the sciences, there's so many steps involved in that, right? Just from learning techniques to other things. And we've long in biology had a course called directed research. So this is biology 4932 that students can sign up for. And the only thing they have to do is get permission to sign up, right? So they have to come talk to a faculty member about doing research in their lab. And every semester, pretty much that I've been here, I've had at least one directed research student. So they are a student who will work with me on a research project, right, that's within my own research area. And ideally, I try to get these students as freshmen. So this is one of the reasons that I really think it's great that we're moving more research into the freshman experience, because particularly for me, right, it's very unlikely that students would actually get to a publishable result in a semester. Right. I'm going to need probably a couple of years with them to get something that could be published. And so I try to get students who hopefully will be willing to work with me for, 2, 3, 4 or more semesters of their time here. so that we can learn new lab techniques, right? Troubleshoot things, carry out projects, prepare posters or oral presentations, go to conferences, all of that kind of stuff that I want them to be involved in. But in the sciences, it really can take a long time to get to, right, a publishable result. Depends on how many experiments need to be involved in things, right? And all of that. So I have some students who are working on things that I do hope will lead to some publications in the near future, but we haven't quite gotten there yet. But I have gotten students who presented posters at conferences. And so directed research is I mean, I don't see why, I don't know that if every department has a directed research course, but I think it's a great idea to have that opportunity. And it's we also have something called independent study that's a little bit different, I guess. I don't know. Directed research is really the course that folks sign up for. And as part of that, so the provost mini grant that I got just came out of an idea last summer where I happened to be up at the University of Alabama, where I have a collaborator, and he was talking about, he had all these work study students who were working on digitizing their herbarium. Now they have a huge herbarium. An herbarium is basically a museum of plant specimens. They're dried plant specimens, and they can be used for all kinds of different sorts of research. And I started talking to him about this because when I joined the faculty in 2018, we inherited a little herbarium here at AUM. It's been kind of ignored and disrepair. Not a whole lot was happening with it. But he pointed me in the direction of some papers that said, hey, you can actually digitize herbariums pretty easily. It doesn't cost a lot. Here's a list of equipment and things, and students can do it. And they can learn a lot going through this process of basically photographing specimens, inputting information, uploading things to public databases. And so I decided that that would actually be perfect budget-wise for the Provost Mini Grant. And I had a student who'd already been working with me, and I talked to her about, would you like this as a project? Would this be a project you'd be interested in doing, right? Hopefully we'd be able to have you do some presentations and other things. And that student, Samantha Mejia, she jumped on board with that. And she's been doing a great job. She's someone who's always had to work and fit research around a work schedule. So her being able to get paid at least a little bit of money through the mini grant. So most of the budget actually went to paying her $10 an hour to be able to do the work. And she's still working on it. We have about 1,000 specimens. So this is, we took a while to get set up. We also actually got help from Will Fenn in fine arts, who's an expert photographer, and we didn't really know much about that. So this was a nice little way to get some interdisciplinary stuff going. And hopefully we'll be able to continue that kind of interdisciplinary work in the future. But so far, Samantha has been able to present at the Auburn student, the research student symposium, the research symposium for students that they have, and as well as here at AUM. And we have plans to have her present at a conference at the beginning of August that is on basically plant invasion genomics and other things. And so and herbarium specimens play a role in a lot of that. And you can actually extract DNA from dried herbarium specimens, and there's some other things. So it'll be a good place for her. That's a national conference, and it's going to be in Louisiana at the beginning of August. And so I've got a couple of other students working with me this summer who I actually have paid as through an RU program through that consortium for plant invasion genomics that I'm involved in. And so I also have students, so Samuel Monger and Isabella Soto are both working with me this summer in that RU program. So that is actually external money paying them for 10 weeks. They get a great stipend. They get $6,000 for 10 weeks.
Oh, wow.
And they'll go to that conference as well. So like today, we just had a meeting. We were reading some papers, and we were discussing, and they're supposed to be over there making a supply list for me, things that we need to order for their projects. And sort of refining what their individual projects will be, and working out what we can get done in 10 weeks to get them to a poster for the conference. So a lot of planning involved in these things, but yeah, so I think the more we have freshman experiences, the easier it is to get more students to the senior level, right? Junior and senior level experiences as well. They'll be better prepared, and it's more likely to get them to a place where they can publish.
Yeah, I agree. This isn't a like overnight change. It's going to start from that freshman level to start making it a part of our culture, as opposed to just something that we throw at them their senior year for a capstone or thesis or something along those lines. And I think that we're all in agreement. That's kind of what we're trying to do is to build that momentum.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'll come back to you later because I want to talk more about the mini grant process and
Sure.
how that worked out for you and stuff like that. Don, we'll come back to you, and you've already touched on some of the projects that you've been working on with your students, but I wonder how it is that you're incorporating research into your lesson plans.
Well, I mean, it depends on the course. And again, I teach mostly graduate classes, so I teach like 1 or 2 undergraduate classes a year, maybe, and they're senior level classes. But I mean, the way, if it's a data analysis class or stat class, you can incorporate the research in there by just having data sets that have been collected. Going away from the book. This is a real consumer data set. But the other way is having students do research in the library, using the e-library system. So if you have, let's say, I'll give you an example. Let's say you're trying to predict the consumer will continue to buy a certain product or from a certain company. We would do that in business. And so you would have this behavioral intention kind of construct. Well, how did people measure that? I mean, and so part of the research is just going to the library system and finding studies where people published about that, and then coming back to the classroom and discussing it. So I found that consumer attitudes really. I have this article that shows that really led to that construct, and somebody else will say, well, that's good, but I have ease of use, that if the consumer found the app to be easy to use, they'll use it again, that kind of stuff. And that promotes open discussion. It's good for, using a case method approach if you got a specific company you want to use. So that's how I sort of build it in to my classes, both graduate and undergrad.
Very cool. This is kind of for both of you. What have been the biggest challenges that you all have had to deal with when you're trying to get students involved, other than motivation? Has there been anything internally also, that's been a difficulty? And if you don't feel comfortable talking about that, that's totally okay too. But I just kind of want to see if there's any similarities in your experiences. And I'm sure that whoever's going to view this later on might have some similar issues. And I wonder how you combated those challenges.
Well, my mic's open, so I'll just talk again. The very first thing is faculty motivation before it's student motivation. And I say that because these research projects that I worked on, they're not part of my course load. So it's not like, I'm teaching 3 or 4 classes and this is one of the 3 classes. This is like extra. So the faculty member has to be willing to do extra work I'm talking about research projects out of the classroom, I'm talking about, so, if it was part of the faculty workload, I think you would see more faculty members motivated to work with students and research. And I'm just, and it may have been that way at one time and now it's not. I don't really know the history of that, but that would be the first thing. So assuming the faculty member is motivated to do sort of an extra project with students, because that's how it's viewed by the faculty, at least the faculty I work with, is, do you have an extra project? And it is, and I just want to point this out too, because I know Vanessa mentioned this, is that there's no research project that's immediately publishable by any students. I just want you to know that it takes probably another year working outside of the classroom to get to that point. So yeah, I'm 100% in agreement with you on that. It takes a while, but once the faculty member is motivated to continue to work with students, the next thing is to discuss or convince or talk to the students that this is the result of working on research. All of these things will happen besides that you're becoming more aware, more analytical. They have to see the value of publication, for example. What will that do? Why should you invest your time in this? So the very first question is, why should the faculty member invest his or her time? The second question is, why should the students invest their time? And unless it's a class where this is the syllabus and this is part of it, and you have to do that to get the grade, why would you? And then if you want to publish with a student, then the next question is, are you willing to continue to work on this project after you graduate? And a lot of students will say, no, I'm done. Thank you very much for the experience, but I don't really need that. Like I said, 1 or 2 out of 10 will be motivated to continue to work after class. So that's sort of my take on some of the obstacles. And the other thing too is, you almost have to get, unless you have a vast network of people all around the world, it depends what kind of research we're all talking about. We're all doing different research, of course, but it is good to get the mini grant to help pay for some of those expenses, like collecting data is a little bit. I have a big network, so I can collect data and not cost hardly anything. But a lot of times, depending on the data you're collecting, depending on the research you're doing, you actually need some money to help pay for the data collection effort too. So that's another issue.
Yeah, and I'll say that our research committee has met multiple times, and every time that we meet, the faculty motivation part is something that comes up, and we've tried to talk with the provost about helping with some extra funds, and the mini grant was one of the ways to kind of help offset that a little bit. So it's something that's kind of been talked about, and he's very aware. So, but we are trying, to offset that a little bit, because there is some kind of a breakdown there, I think, that needs to be worked on. So, Vanessa, your turn.
Yeah, I'll jump in. So I agree with everything Donald was saying. So I did mention that we have a designated class, Biology 4932, but I also want to make it clear that does not count towards my teaching load. So I teach that on top of everything else. So that is always a problem. And there are certainly so I'm motivated because research is still a portion of my evaluation. I'm pre-tenure. I'm motivated because I'm still interested in these things. I need to keep current if I'm going to maintain a research program, and all of that. But it is work that is extra. For example, I'm not teaching this summer, but I am here every day mentoring my students in this 10-week REU program. And really, I thought about teaching. I was sort of scheduled to do it, but I ended up backing out because I just said, there's no way that I can mentor these students effectively, and actually get significant amounts of research done this summer, and teach it's actually the biology labs that have the course-based undergraduate research experience. I was like, there's no way I'm going to be able to do all of that. So the students are getting paid, but I'm not getting paid for my summer, but I will be here every day working with them, basically. So it is hard. It's not something where I'm not sure I can manage that every summer, right? If I'm going to keep doing that, right, that may not be financially something that I can keep doing. So I agree with that part about motivation, but also, financial support. It is hard that the only way we get paid in the summer is through teaching, even if we're doing significant amounts of research. And I know that that's, perhaps grants with summer salary, but then we also have to be making sure that people can get grants that support that kind of summer salary and that kind of thing. So there's just so many aspects of that can be challenging, especially when we're at a more teaching focused smaller school. So the other thing I was going to mention that can be somewhat limiting, has been somewhat challenging for me, is getting all the equipment that I needed. We have very, very low startup packages here. I think there's some change in that a little bit in the sciences, but at least when I was hired, right, it was a very, very, very low amount for the kinds of equipment that are needed in the sciences. So I've kind of borrowed stuff from teaching labs. I borrowed stuff from colleagues. I cobbled together some external grants that were small, that were enough to give me some things to get some money. I begged the provost for some research equipment. I'm hopefully getting more grants, but for some of my stuff, it's just taken a long time to really get my research going, because I didn't have the actual lab equipment necessary to do contemporary work in my field. So I'm still missing some things that I'm trying to get. So it just slows the process down. And also, when you have to be so budget conscious, when you only have such a tiny amount of money, it's like I'm having to spend a lot of time searching for the best deal for things. I know I don't want to get too in the weeds on that kind of thing, but it's like, it does actually impact the amount of research that we can do, how much we have to spend time like shopping around and worrying about our budgets and funding an independent student project. Right, making sure we actually have the equipment and money to spend on any supplies or things that the student will need. Right, they can sign up for the directed research class, but how we give them that research opportunity, there's no money that comes with that class. Right, there's nothing. I have to have money and things to do in the lab. Right, I have to have equipment and supplies, or we have to be able to pay for that out of the biology sort of laboratory fees budget, and things. And everybody, right, we're buying supplies for all of our labs that comes out of that one pool of money. So an individual faculty member can't be very greedy. We can't be in there spending all that stuff on our own personal research, because we have to spend that money primarily on keeping the teaching labs running. So I do think time and finances are probably the two biggest factors. The remaining challenge I want to mention, that it's not so much that students aren't motivated, they're just so busy. And for many of mine, they work off campus. And so finding time to actually, between their classes and their work schedule, to get them in for research. I've had students where I thought I explained sort of the time commitment needed, and then when it came down to having them in the lab and in the class, they'd be like, oh, well, I'm sorry, I can only come like an hour. Like, but the procedure we have to do is 4 hours. Like, it can't just stop it. Like, we have to start it and then it has to be finished. Like, you can't just stop after an hour and pick it up later. So, that has been challenging. I've had semesters where we didn't get very much done because getting the student into the lab for a long enough period of time to achieve any actual lab work was very difficult. And so I guess one thing that I've thought of, I wish there were more sort of work study opportunities on campus for students, so that they didn't have to necessarily commute off campus to work as much. They could come, do work study, make some money that way, but then, at least eliminate that commute time or reduce it, so that we'd have more time maybe for students to do research projects. But, I don't know.
That's a great idea. And I wrote it down just because I think at some point that's going to come up as something that we need to talk about is how do we keep the students here so that they can student.
Right.
Right. So,
and research just takes a lot of time.
Right.
So yeah, the more they can actually commit to like an afternoon for something, the better. But so many of our students, they need that, they need an external job. So they have to leave somewhere else.
So what I'll say from hearing both of you talk about the challenges, which of course are very similar, and I think that's something across campus that everybody would share in. It sounds like the solutions to some of those challenges are patience, making sure that you're doing a good deal of self-care for yourself, and not overburdening yourself. And then also maybe taking an approach very similar to what you talked about, Vanessa, in your freshman course, is implementing some of this research more inside the course curriculum as opposed to relying on outside activities to kind of spark that interest, and then in hopes that that student will stay around because they're interested in that study, but until senior year where you have some type of publishable product down the line. And so, I mean, I think that sounds pretty much like the best solution that we have with the challenges that we're all kind of faced with when it's an outside resource issue, so to speak. So would you guys agree with that?
I think that's definitely one path. Yep. Yep. I mean, there's probably more than one solution to some of these problems, but especially when some of these problems are financial, I do think starting students early and getting them motivated to stay around, and then and yeah, hopefully getting to something publishable after several semesters of work is a great way for students to really learn how to do research and get excited about something, and also get faculty a product, right, that is something that is valued here at the university in terms of, you know, our advancement or professional reputation, et cetera.
So Donald, I'll come to you next. And you kind of mentioned it before, you know, that you have outside resources that you can kind of pull from to kind of offset that the cost factor a little bit, like with data sets and such. Are there any other resources that, you know, other disciplines, you know, would be able to kind of pull from that you can think of that would be beneficial?
Well, like I don't even have the same kind of issues that Vanessa does, because she's talking about lab equipment. And so those things are maybe super expensive, and maybe that they can only be used in certain locations. So it really depends on the research to answer that. I was talking about data collection resources, or like having a network of colleagues that I work with in different countries that can get me, if I have to collect data in a country and I can't travel there. I mean, most of the data I collected over the last 5 to 6 years, I traveled there until the pandemic. You know, I was in that country. I was able to give a what do you call it, a seminar, and have all these other faculty come. And then when I left, they're all motivated to work on a project with me. So that, you know, that's how you do it. But so unless the faculty member has that personal network, it's hard. It would be hard to kind of duplicate that. I think it doesn't substitute for having funds though, in dollars. You still need dollars. You know, the thing is that, you know, it's kind of interesting because when I listen to different administrators, some administrators say that this is a teaching university, and other administrators say, no, it's not teaching, because we still have a component of faculty member evaluation that is research oriented, but we're not a research institution, so we don't have a lot of research dollars. If you look at the way our accrediting body, AACSB, looks at the 5 different types of universities, we're really a comprehensive university. We're sort of in the middle. We have research requirements, but not extremely heavy, like we're not a major research institution. But so we don't have all those dollars to give. But when you look at institutions like us, similar to ours, sister type institutions, you know what, you see that they often put some resources into the final product also. In fact, many do. So that means that, you know, if you get an article published and it's a certain level journal, they'll pay the faculty member, you know, $1,000 or something like that. Or if it's a B level, $500, something like that. So we don't do that. It's our only motivation for the faculty is promotion and tenure. You know, that's it. So because you want to get promoted and tenured, you'll do research. But I guess what I'm saying is there's different models for faculty member motivation, overcoming obstacles, getting students involved. So there's not one model. There's multiple types of models, and some of those may work here and some of them may not. But I think I would like to explore different models to see, you know, what's good. But one way or the other, I mean, I'll just conclude by saying one way or the other, for sure, it would be beneficial to have more funding for research opportunities. That's for one way or the other.
Well, we have about 15 minutes left, so I'm going to go ahead and share some information about some of the funding opportunities that we have to try to spark that research and to offset some of the things that we've discussed here. And then we'll also share some data real quick, and then we'll follow up with any questions that now Cindy or Eric might have for you guys. So hang on 1 second. Oops. Bear with me 1 second. I've shared the wrong screen. I apologize. I have everything opened up like 50 different ways. I've completely crossed it out. Technical difficulties. You'd think we'd have all this stuff down pat now. Okay, let's try this again. Okay, are you guys, what view are you guys seeing, Scott?
You mean like, can I see the PowerPoint? I'm sorry.
Yes. Can you
Yes,
see the
yes.
data? Okay.
Yes, yes.
Okay, we'll just have to do it this way. I apologize. There it is. Now we've got it. Okay, so this data is just for spring 22. I just wanted to share it just so you can kind of see a snapshot of where we're at and what we're looking to do. I added the goal that we're supposed to be reaching for our Title III grant each year. In 2021, we were supposed to have 699. We actually had 408. So we were short of our goal. And I think from talking with Scott earlier, since he's our data analyst guy, he said that, you know, there was still probably some data out there that we just haven't yet captured, but that we will, you know, eventually capture as we're going through the process still. But this is just what we reported to the government this past reporting session. Currently, after this year, you know, without counting the summer, we're probably around 600 different opportunities for students that have been working on some type of research. And this counts as all of our students in directed studies courses or independent work, anybody who participated in the research celebration or symposium or research day, which we'll talk a little bit more about that as well. And so, you know, I only just show this so we can kind of get an idea of what it is our plan is and what we're looking to do. So I want to eventually have an opportunity to offer research to every student that we have on campus, but our goal is really only to do it for about 800 students. So I think it's something that's very manageable to do, especially if we're embedding it more in our undergraduate freshman courses and we're building as we go forward. One of the things that we're offering to try to increase that number is our undergraduate scholarship. It's for 1 hour of tuition, and it's for either an approved internship or directed undergraduate research course. And these are for courses that are outside of the normal curriculum. It's not necessary for your program to graduate. It's something that you take on as an elective. The provost is offering it to try to incentivize students getting involved in those directed studies courses or internships for that matter. Information for this is on our website. So if you have any students that you think would be interested in it, please go ahead and forward it to them. That would be awesome. Vanessa, this is where you might come in. We have many grants available also through the Provost's office in the amount of over or just at $3,000 so far. I think it's been a year and a half now, or just at, and we've given over $64,000 out to faculty for undergraduate specific projects, which is pretty awesome, considering that it's only been a year and a half. So 22 different grants. I think we're working on 23 here soon. We just have to go through the approval process. Some faculty have gotten it multiple times. So if you have different projects that you're interested in, you can go ahead and get it multiple times. Vanessa, did we give it to you twice or just the once?
Just the once. I think my
Okay.
colleague Claudia Stein has gotten it a couple times.
Yeah, and Greg C as well, I think.
And
is
I'll
also-
certainly, I'm gonna apply again at some point. I'm just, at this point, I've been Samantha's still working on that one project. I kind of wanted to get a little farther on that, and then I'm thinking about other things that might be appropriate. And I have a student who will be doing director of research with me in the fall, Nivya Patel, and I'll probably apply for one of these to help fund some work that I'd like her to do in the fall. And she's been working with me since she was a freshman, and she actually. She's gone right now at an REU program. She got into an REU program at the University of Vermont.
Awesome.
And she she's doing actually fruit fly, like genetics and all kinds of cool stuff. So, and I think the fact that I was able to offer, I was able to write her a great letter of recommendation because I'd worked with her for so many semesters in research and I really knew her well. And I think that's another key component we haven't mentioned yet for students, right? That opportunity to do research is also a great way to get to know us as faculty better and make connections with us. And we can get to know the students better and then be able to offer them letters of recommendation that are the kinds of things that professional schools really want to see. So I'm really excited for her that she's got that outside experience at another university, and excited to hear about how it's going for her. But I've found the whole application process for these undergraduate research and creative activity awards very easy. It's not a really complex application. You just have to kind of think of something that's going to be appropriate for the budget, and it didn't take too long either. You guys were pretty quick about getting back to me. A few weeks, I think, 3 weeks, something like that. So that's much faster turnaround than many other opportunities.
Yeah, we tried to get the responses back to you within about 3 weeks tops. It has to go through the research committee where we pick 2 reviewers out of the committee that'll take a look at it and then send the response back to me or sometimes Dr. Stallings, just depending upon who's available. But we do try to turn that out pretty quick. And I will agree in an unbiased way, in comparison to other grant funding that I've tried to get, it is super easy to go ahead and submit it and then get that turnaround. And then I do like too that it's a rolling grant, so it's not anything that there's a specific deadline for. It could be anytime during the academic year or summer. You send us an application and you'll get that response back very quickly.
Yeah, that's super helpful. Please don't change that. Sometimes it's like, oh, I just, like when I applied, I hadn't actually been intending to apply, and it was just through that conversation, right, with a collaborator about herbariums and stuff. And I was like, oh, this would be great. Like, so it just, within a week, I went from not having any plans to apply to working up an application, right? So sometimes people just get a good idea, and having that ability to just submit it on that rolling timeline is really helpful.
Yeah, and I don't know when the provost is going to pull the plug on it. He hasn't given us a cap thus far on how many, so it would behoove everybody to get in while it's good, so to speak, because it was only supposed to be for a year, and he's just kind of let it ride a little bit. So we're kind of, I think, on borrowed time with the project, but he's seen so much success from it that he definitely is interested in continuing on with something. It just might not be this, I don't know, but definitely something that if you're interested, or you even have just an inkling of an idea, to even contact us and ask a question, about the process, and we can even help you based on some of the other projects that have been worked on, to kind of give you some ideas and, act as a muse in some way, the best that we can. So definitely something to take advantage of, and to help offset some of the difficulties, that we talked about earlier. Also, each year, and the College of Sciences has had a research symposium for like ever, and it's been super successful. And we kind of started piggybacking off of that a little bit, and acting kind of like an umbrella event that includes the research celebration, but then we wanted to open it up so that all disciplines could have some kind of involvement in research or creative activity. And so this year, the College of Education, they went ahead and they started their own symposium-esque kind of a thing, based on like a flash talk kind of a format. And they had a lot of success with that, and are going to continue on each year. We want each of the colleges to do a similar thing. Dr. Harrington was there for College of Business. There was 3 students for there, but all of them did a wonderful job with their poster projects. And that's something that she's definitely interested in trying to incorporate more into her courses that she's teaching, where, where she starts them a little bit earlier, so at least have some kind of a product to present by April, which we're going to stick with the April date. I think we're just going to do it a little earlier on in the month. That way we can catch more of the students. Because I think by the time that we ended up doing everything, which I think there was some scheduling issue because of Honors Day and holiday, I think it might have been Easter actually, we ended up having to move everything to the end of the month. But I think we're going to want to try to do it earlier. Regardless, we want to try to start expanding the event and getting more people involved by talking about it earlier. So come fall, we're definitely going to be pushing the thought of it so that folks can start working on projects in fall, in hopes of having some type of workable product by spring. Let's see, what other fun things do we want to talk about that? That's it. I mean, we doubled the amount of participation that we had from last year, which was like 68 students, I think. And most of those were from the research symposium from the College of Sciences. But to have every college involved this go was huge. So, all right. I will just also give a plug to some of the other workshops that we have coming up. We have another one this month for incorporating service learning into your course, another free thing that we can do, hopefully within the course itself, to kind of help engage students and keep them involved and give them some type of resume-worthy experience that they can take with them beyond graduation. And then we'll talk a lot about peer mentors in July, which I think, Vanessa, you've definitely had a peer mentor before.
Yes. Yep. Several times now.
So I might get with you and see if you're interested in talking again. I don't remember if this one was outside of your schedule or not when we talked, but
I might have something else on that day. It's sort of in flux still a little bit. So
okay.
Check back with me.
Sounds good. Thank you. And then last but not least, we'll talk about developing it, and we're implementing an internship course, and we'll talking to Hillary Gamble with theater folks, and then Christine Harrington with College of Business, and she's going to be kind of over the internship business, although I think she kind of is handing it off to some of the other faculty members a little bit in some kind of capacity, but I digress. So she'll be talking about that, and we are trying to develop as many opportunities as we possibly can to help with faculty and staff development. So if you have any ideas or things that you'd like for us to discuss, please send it our way. I will be sending out the traditional survey. How did we do? Any feedback that you would like to give on those points, there'll be a perfect venue for that. Thoughts and questions from Dr. Sterling, the last man standing.
Okay, well, since you called on me, I have a question for Vanessa and Donald. I was wondering about how you find the students. do you make an announcement to your class that you're interested in working with somebody? Or did Samantha just come to you, or those 4 Vietnamese students that Donald talked about? It's just like after a project that you want to continue something, or do you just make an announcement, or how do you meet them for this?
I'll jump in. So it's kind of all of the above. So I've definitely made announcements before. Sometimes students just email me, and this is because we've already got a directed research class. And so, sometimes it's just students who are trying to fill a credit hour. And I don't always take those students on. I will, so either there's some choice, I exercise some choice here because I've had, sometimes I've already got too many students. I can't work with more. And then other times the motivation isn't really there. And it's not that I don't want to offer those opportunities, but if I know it's not going to go well because the student is only trying to get a credit hour, and is not very interested in actually what I'm doing or a lot of these things, sometimes I say no. But a lot of times, because I teach in the freshman classes, I will reach out to students directly who seem like they were expressing, some more interest in the subject, we're doing well in the class, just maybe I just saw some kind of spark or motivation in that direction. And I'll just email them and I'll ask them, I'll say, is this something you might be interested in doing? And generally they have been. So I've recruited several students through just emailing them because they were in my class and they seemed, more motivated about the topics we were covering, and they just seem like, and occasionally I'll get students who are not interested, but by and large they've been interested, and I've ended up working multiple semesters with students that way because I teach in the freshman classes, and so I was able to talk to them early on as freshmen. So yeah, I don't hesitate to just reach out to students directly, and offer them opportunities if I think that they would be great, great students to have. But I also think just announcing in the class, because I have done that as well. Like when I was advertising for the summer REU program opportunities that I've had the opportunity to offer, I was just sending those out, as general advertisements and seeing who wanted to apply and all that stuff. I'll say the main thing that one of the things that I think is good for people to know. I think tons of students are interested in research. I think many of them think they're scared. They're scared to ask us, or they think that they aren't good enough. So I've had students who said, "Oh, like after I reached out to them, oh, like I could do that. I had no idea. I thought I'd have to like apply to work in your lab or something like that." They thought there'd be like a bigger process. So I think a lot of times it's just sort of confidence actually that's a barrier for our students, even, more so than motivation. Some of them just don't actually think they're cut out for it. And so we kind of have to reach out and show them that that's not the case.
Thank you.
I don't have anything to add to that. It's really what I do as well.
One thing that I'll add to kind of what Vanessa was saying, about reaching out to the students is that, any student, they've never done research before. They don't know what to expect or what their avenues are. And so it's really incumbent upon us to, put out that life vest, so to speak, to try to encourage them because they just don't even know to ask. So, by introducing into the classroom, like we discussed, we're opening it up to everybody. It's not just the best student or, the students that's the most motivated. It's everybody realizes that maybe there's an equal playing field, and that we're, explaining to them what those steps are then to kind of get involved, and that everybody's involved. So research in itself, doing that way can be far more inclusive than what I think it has traditionally been viewed as.
Yeah, and I just wanted to throw out, so when I've advertised generally, I have far less success than when I reach out directly. And again, I think it comes to that confidence thing. So I've sent out general things where it's like, is anybody interested in doing direct research? And I've gotten crickets. And in the same class, I would have emailed somebody directly, and then they're like, oh, I could do that? Oh, okay. Like, I didn't think you really meant me. even though I sent this ad to the whole class, right? It's like, they're still like, oh, I didn't think that I would, I could do that kind of thing. So I haven't had a lot of success with the general advertisements. The students who will respond to those are sort of already feeling confident and motivated. So if you want to capture the other students, reaching out directly to them is probably the best approach.
Great, thank you. Eric, did that answer your question, you think?
Yeah, it was a very good answer. Thank you.
Well, Scott, do you have any questions?
I do not. Thank you.
Well, I really appreciate you guys joining us today and talking about the opportunities that you presented to students. And I look forward to seeing the additional work that I know you guys are both working on. So, and I hope we can get Donald a mini grant, because I think you have some really awesome opportunities that some students would be involved or be appreciative to be involved in and would learn a lot. That'd be great. And Vanessa, you're due for another as well.
Thank you.
Thank you guys
Thank
very
you.
much. I appreciate you.
Thanks
Have a
very
good day.
much.
All right, have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.